The Sixth Key, Chapter 18, Isabel. Quote, "To that I may reply," said Don Quixote, "that Dulcinea is the daughter of her own works." Unquote. Miguel de Cervantes, Don Quixote. Montsegur, 1238. The red valley gouged out by giants was already in shadow when Isabel and her mistresses, Rosamonda and Blanche, came to the base of Montsegur. Ahead of them the Templar troubadour Mateo led the way, a man already past his prime and yet eternally youthful. She had always felt safe with him, and she did so now despite the dangers of this journey. In truth, they had been walking for days, in fear of being caught, and despite their exhaustion, they would have to climb that steep, narrow path to the chateau before dark. Yes, Isabel was tired, so tired she could barely feel her feet. And to add to everything else, the dark clouds above were scudding across the coppering sky and threatening a downpour. She felt she must soon collapse from the weight of the belongings she carried, added to that of the child in her belly. For they had been forced to leave the animals below in the township, since the way to the chateau could only be scaled on foot, and a perilous way it was, with its narrow path and smooth stones. She dared not look down, forcing her eyes to stare ahead to the straight backs of her mistresses who led the way, pausing now and then to lend a hand. She had never seen the mistresses tired, nor had she ever seen them afraid. They had made this pilgrimage each year for as long as she could remember, and she recalled them walking just as they were walking now, alongside one another, both with their black dresses flapping, each moving one leg after the other in a rhythm that matched the rhythm of their prayers. Soon, she told herself, they would reach those walls, and safety. But now, through the trees, she could hear the herdsmen gathering the goats before the storm broke, and in the distance bells clanged the discordant resonance, and the sky grew closer. Such sounds made her want to hide behind a clump of hazel bushes, fearing danger, for she was a child of war. She couldn't remember a time without it, nor the fear of the Dominicans or their familiars. She knew the stories back to front. A papal legate had excommunicated the Count of Toulouse for protecting the Cathars, and he was, in turn, murdered by one of the Count's officers, causing the Pope to call for a crusade against the heretics. She would not be here if her mother, just a bundle at the time, had not been spirited away from Béziers by the two sisters on the eve of the Feast of Magdalene. They had taken the small child and the treasure that had once belonged to Mary Magdalene herself, the Cathar treasure which must be handed down from woman to woman. From that time on, the sacred treasure in its pouch had been safely hidden beneath the folds of Rosamunda's dress, and it was there now. Isabel looked up to see the clouds gathering in council and preparing to drizzle their concerns over the valley floor. A low rumble made the earth tremble, and she pulled the shawl over her shoulders and recalled the stories. After the fall of Béziers in 1209 and the terrible massacre of all its citizens, the world turned over into a hell pit. Siege after siege, battle after battle, those were terrible years. War in the Corbière, war in the Minervois and in the Rosée, war in Foix and in Toulouse. The land was laid to waste, and villages and towns were destroyed. Who would want to tend crops that would surely be trampled to dust? Who would want to repair a stable door or to fix a leaking roof when at any moment everything might be put to the torch? Insecurity and chaos ruled the land, and the nobles, despoiled of their inheritance, went into hiding, striking out at the crusaders from their high strongholds. In the meantime, a vast network of secret agents, troubadours like Mateo, had brought news of planned attacks, sieges, and skirmishes. Her mother had been 17 and pregnant with Isabel, when the young Count Raymond, having returned from exile with an army, took over the city of Toulouse against the foreign enemy. Alongside the other women, her mother dug walls, hauled rubble through the streets, and worked the siege engines. For 3 weeks they waited for Simon de Montfort, the leader of the crusade, to come to rescue his wife from the Château de Narbonnaise. Isabel's mother was among the women recruited to fire the heavy blocks of masonry from a trebuchet, and they had been firing at random into a confused mass of soldiers when Simon de Montfort was struck on the head and killed. That same hour her mother collapsed, and some time later died giving birth to Isabel. Isabel could see the walls of the Château of Montségur rising up out of the trees, and she paused to catch a breath. She wondered if the good Cathar bishop would be waiting for her with his smiling eyes at the summit. After her mother had died, the twin sisters Rosamonda and Blanche took over her rearing, and she had travelled with them whenever they visited the good Bishop Guilbert de Castres, usually nearing Easter and the festival of Bema. They said the bishop had lived for 12 years as a hermit in a cave to make penance for the sins of the world. Some said he was given to drink from the cup called the Holy Grail in that cave, the cup from which the Lord himself had drunk at the Last Supper. There were many tales about him, but Isabel knew him as a teacher. He came to Montségur now and again to teach and to counsel and to prepare for a momentous occasion he had seen in his visions, which he referred to as an apocalypse, the end of the world. The wind swirled the brambles and bracken now, and shook their wiry arms. Ignoring the temper of nature, Isabel followed her mistresses up the steep-edged path, holding on to the trunks of the boxwood trees that grew all around. Isabel knew that this journey to Montségur had something to do with the apocalypse the good bishop was expecting. After all, they had come here to prepare for it, and to safeguard the treasure that Rosamunda had carried under her skirt all these years. Yes, the world was darkening and war was once again upon them. That is why the bishop had asked the noble Raymond de Pereira to donate Montségur to the cause, so that it could be made ready for the dark time when the dragon of the church would come to steal the Holy Grail. She also sensed excitement in those around her for the child she was carrying, the child of the gallant young noble she had married when she was 17. She had known her husband only 2 months before he died at the hands of the inquisitors, and now she would soon have his child. She was afraid.